Animals. Why this ghostly hyena portrait is the best wildlife photo of 2025. Highlighting the best wildlife photography across land and sea, see some of the winning photos from this year's Wildlife Photographer of the Year contest. South African photographer Wim van den Heever is this year's Wildlife Photographer of the Year, an annual contest run by the Natural History Museum in London. Van den Heever's photo beat out over 60,000 photos submitted from 113 countries. His photograph shows the elusive and endangered brown hyena. Read more. Wim van den Heever, Wildlife Photographer of the Year. By Richard Kemeny. October 15, 2025. It took 10 years for Wim van den Heever to capture his perfect shot. After noticing paw prints and scat in an abandoned mining town along the coast of southern Namibia, he saw an opportunity to snap a picture of a brown hyena, the rarest hyena in the world. Amid fog drifting in from the Atlantic Ocean, he set up his camera trap and waited. And waited. Van den Heever's patience and perseverance rewarded him with a striking, ghostly portrait of a brown hyena in the most perfect frame imaginable, gazing into the night beside the skeletal remains of a long-abandoned building. The photograph, Ghost Town Visitor, earned him the prestigious title of 61st Wildlife Photographer of the Year, awarded today by London's Natural History Museum. The photograph is an eerie juxtaposition of the wild reclaiming human civilization, said competition judge Akanksha Sood Singh in a press release. This picture is a multi-layered story of loss, resilience, and the natural world's silent triumph, making it an unforgettable piece of wildlife and conservation photography. In addition to highlighting one overall winner, the contest highlights photos in subcategories such as the Photojournalism Impact Award. This year's winner was Brazilian Fernando Faciol's image of an orphaned anteater pup following its caregiver at a rehabilitation center. Fernando wanted to highlight, read more. Fernando Faciol, Wildlife Photographer of the Year. How this year's winner got the shot. Nocturnal and solitary, brown hyenas are rarely seen and not an easily persuaded subject for a photograph. Yet they are known to travel through Kalmanskap, a crumbling former diamond mining settlement, as they head to the coast of the Namib Desert in search of fur seal pups and washed-up carrion. Realizing these hyenas were too elusive to capture in person, Van den Heever used camera traps to photograph them remotely. This brought a new set of challenges, from lighting to false triggers, to huge dumps of sand blowing in from the desert. 10 years after first conceiving of the photo and after many disappointing results, he'd finally got his shot. "Can I say I was doing cartwheels?" says Van den Heever. "I was extremely happy, I couldn't believe it." While many of the contest categories highlight one photo, the Portfolio Award goes to a photographer's larger body of work. This year, that award went to self-taught photographer Alexei Karatanov, whose portfolio of drone photos documented the mesmerizing details in the sprawling, remote terrains of the Russian North, Siberia, and Asia. 2 shots, Ice Motifs and Taiga Moon, show a frozen lake and a grassy mound encircled by ice, pine trees, and sphagnum moss. Aside from recognizing awe-inspiring images from more established entrants, the contest also reserves awards for young wildlife photographers. Winner of the Rising Star Award, awarded to up-and-coming photographers between ages 18 to 26, was German photographer Luca Lorenz for his photo of a cheeky koipu stealing the spotlight from mute swans gliding across an urban lake in Germany. Koipu were shipped from South America to Europe for the fur trade and have established populations around the world. The Young Wildlife Photographer of the Year award, ages 15 to 17, went to Andrea Dominici, who spotted a longhorn beetle resting in a stand of Italy's Lepini Mountains that was once logged for beech trees. Framed against now abandoned machinery, After the Destruction explores the notion of habitat loss. Many of this year's award-winning photographs tell stories about the many ways wildlife are now battling for existence. In a first for the competition, this year's award-winning photographs will be exhibited next to the Natural History Museum's Biodiversity Intactness Index. The metric reveals how much original biodiversity remains in an area and helps track international progress towards conservation goals. The inclusion of the index will give visitors insights into how the planet's habitats are changing in response to human pressures and is particularly timely given current rates of species decline around the world. For the photographer, the picture holds a simple message: wildlife isn't separate or distant from us. Even in our cities and urban environments, nature finds its way to live alongside us, and coexistence is possible if we are willing to embrace it, he says. That's basically the story I'm trying to tell. The Photojournalist Story Award went to Spaniard Javier Aznar González de Rueda. His work explored the complex relationship between humans and rattlesnakes across the United States. Annual rattlesnake roundups, where hunters compete to collect the most snakes, began in the 1930s. Today, these Read more. Javier Aznar González de Rueda, Wildlife Photographer of the Year. Visitors gaze at hundreds of western diamondback rattlesnakes at the annual Rattlesnake Roundup in Sweetwater, Texas. Many of these snakes will be killed and sold for their skin and meat. Roundups can harm other animals too. Snakes are often driven fr. Read more. Javier Aznar González de Rueda, Wildlife Photographer of the Year. Drops of deadly venom drip into a glass as an eastern diamondback rattlesnake is milked. The venom is used to produce antivenom and has the potential to treat certain medical conditions, such as chronic nerve pain. Read more about the fight to improv. Read more. Javier Aznar González de Rueda, Wildlife Photographer of the Year. Contest winners spotlight wildlife threats. This year's competition received a record-breaking 60,636 entries from 113 countries and territories. In addition to awarding one grand prize, the competition bestows 18 additional awards to photos that highlight wildlife. Brazilian photographer and National Geographic explorer Fernando Fasciol won this year's Impact Award with Orphan of the Road, a heartbreaking image of a giant anteater pup, orphaned through a road collision, trailing its caregiver after an evening feed at a rehabilitation center. After developing survival skills, the pup will be released back into the wild. In End of the Roundup, Spanish photojournalist Javier Aznar González de Rueda's portfolio depicts the complex relationship between humans and rattlesnakes in the United States. González de Rueda hoped to inspire protection for these snakes, at once demonized and studied for cutting-edge medicine, and which are disappearing from the American landscape. The photos, and the story they tell, earned Rueda the Photojournalist Award. See more of Rueda's photos documenting American rattlesnakes here. John E. Juarez of Spain won this year's photojournalism category for his photo documenting the groundbreaking